welcome, Bill and Paul. One of the things I liked about Parting Glances was that it doesn't hit the audience over the head with the sexuality. It's cleared up in the first 2 minutes or so, and it's very understated.
Yeah, well, it's one thing I did want to sort of get the sex out of the way at the beginning, because so often in films with gay subject matter, they work up to it for an hour, and then, you know, when the two men or the two women finally kiss, the whole audience screams. So I sort of wanted to, you know, have the sex at the beginning and then go on from there.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did you start with the idea for Parting Glances?
Well, I wanted to make a story that was all set in 24 hours in New York, because it seemed, you know, very much a New York experience where, you know, you could just be walking around in the afternoon and then sort of through a series of accidental events wind up, you know, staying up for the next 24 hours with all this kind of random sequence of events happening. You know, going to a dinner party and going to a party and going to a disco and having a fight with your boyfriend in the park at 7 a.m. and going to the Fire Island and going to the airport, and, you know, I tried to, you know, compress everything into that 24-hour time span. Also, so that the characters would be dealt with in a very specific way, that, you know, you wouldn't be able to make too many generalizations. It's not supposed to be, you know, all gays throughout the world. It's supposed to be a few gays in New York for, you know, this little short period of time. So that was the initial idea. And also, I mean, you know, the larger picture was kind of dismay at the way gays are always portrayed in movies, which is, you know, psychotic murderers or child molesters or whatever. So I thought
less flattering.
It would be nice to have a movie with just, you know, nice, normal gay people in it for a change.
Well, from what I could see when I saw it, it didn't matter that they were gay. That seemed rather secondary. It was just about two people in a relationship.
It plays pretty universally, I think. So.
And also, one of the things the 24-hour period reminded me of was a film that I'm sure you know, Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is set in a weekend or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
We just divided by 3. I guess 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. You have a character of Nick, which is an AIDS patient, and it seems to be very understated. Was that your intention when you wrote it? Because
well, I knew that there would be all kinds of you know, plays and television movies dealing with the subject by the time Parting Glances was released, because it takes a long time to make a theatrical feature. So I just wanted it to have, you know, a smaller place in the film kind of be part of the overall, you know, fabric or story of present-day gay life in a big city in the U.S. So, yeah, I mean, the tone of that was intentional.
How do you find the audiences are reacting to that specific character? Because
well, they usually like him the best. It's the guy who plays that, Steve Buscemi, he's actually in real life very quiet and shy, so he's been a bit overwhelmed by all this tremendous, you know, press attention that he's gotten, and, you know, agents calling him and tracking him down and everything. So no, audiences and critics alike have responded extremely well to that character, that part.
And you've also put him on the poster, I think.
Yeah, the distributor, you know, liked that image, sort of, you know, Parting Glasses, and he is kind of glancing or whatever, and so.
When you made Parting Glances, did you have a gay audience in mind, or did you feel that it would be universal to everybody?
Well, the film I did sort of think is like, you know, like a present to gay people or whatever. It was kind of very much almost like a love letter or something in some ways, because, you know, I kind of like gay culture in the U.S. very much, and especially in New York. But, you know, I also felt that it would just play as, you know, a movie, so that, you know, it would appeal to, you know, gays and straights. And it has, you know, begun to cross over to somewhat straighter audiences.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've opened across the country, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, where is it playing, Paul? You had the list.
It's playing from east to west, north to south. New York, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Atlanta on the East Coast. And then as we move west, we get to, tell me if I miss any, Chicago. And then this Friday, we're opening up in Kansas City. And we have opened in Phoenix. And then the coast, Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. That should add up to 10. If it doesn't,
each week it opens some more.
It's hard to keep track. It's fun though, because you're like spreading, and people seem to like it a lot.
It's
a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling.
How have you found the reviews across the country?
Varied.
They're completely schizophrenic. For the most part, they've been very good. And in some cities, in Los Angeles, Seattle, Chicago, Atlanta, Philadelphia, it's got absolute rave reviews in the major press. Some cities, one paper will have a rave review, and another paper will completely trash it. Some places it's just sort of they don't quite know what to make of it. I was interviewed by one of the critics in one of these cities, who was someone who was a bit perplexed by the film, and what came through seems to be kind of subtle underlying prejudice in some critics, including in New York, where they want the film to have been more of a problem drama. They don't understand why it's so kind of off the cuff and casual and sort of jolly, and they sort of say, well, isn't it like sort of too funny or something? Or it's too funny to be dealing with this subject matter. And I don't know. I think they want it to be a gripping prison drama or something like that. I don't know what they want of it, but I don't know. Some of them don't get it, as it were. But now, generally the critical response is good, and in some instances it's,
superlative.
Yeah, absolutely. Waves. In L.A., the film is tremendously popular, and Chicago and Atlanta, of all places, it's like been selling out.
Has that surprised you?
A little bit. We thought, Atlanta, but obviously they're groovier than we think.
Well, they don't have no deer to bother them, I'm sure.
Right, that's true.
But what about Janet Maslin? She had said something of the New York Times, the decor is as important as the characters, which I thought that was a very strange remark.
Well, it sort of is anti-gay prejudice. It sounds like a neat excuse because I made the film, so of course I want to poo-poo the critics' perspective, but there's so much of the critical response and the audience response is the exact opposite. They say, oh, I know these people in real life, and they're not cliches, and they plug into the film so directly, they're just kind of like swept along by it. And then, a critic will say, I found it flippant and superficial. And I think sort of what they're saying is that, first of all, they don't particularly want to accept the characters and kind of go with the flow, as it were. And another thing is that it's just kind of a basic gay prejudice that, gays are superficial. It's like Oscar Wilde, everything just kind of floats on the surface. Or they think of, gays are decorators and hairdressers and, verbally they're very pat, but, they have no real substance and depth. Isn't this a characterization of, the way they live their lives? They're, in a word, superficial. But I don't think the film is superficial at all, and I don't think the characters are, and I certainly don't think, gay people are superficial. So, but how can you answer that? I mean, you can't write a letter to the New York Times because it just sounds like, We
can tell people that Parting Glasses has a wonderful decor. So says Janet Maslin.
Actually, she said good things about the film, so the distributor was happy. They could pull the quotes.
Right.
Anarchically powerful. And, so she said, there were good things in with her sort of poo-pooing it.
Now, speaking of set decorations, you had borrowed a lot of apartments and houses and lofts to make this film.
Yeah, that was one reason that we kept the expenses down. So that actually, I wrote the screenplay so that the locations would be very limited, just a few places, because that's one of the great expenses in shooting film. That larger budget films, every day they're setting up at a new place. they're at the dentist, and then the next scene, they're in a taxi cab, and the next scene, it just goes on, and they're in a restaurant. So of course each location is a whole new day that you have to, set up and move everyone there. So we sort of planned it where, we'd be in a loft for 2 weeks, uninterrupted, things like that.
You had casted with non-union actors. Did you find that difficult because you have some very talented cast members?
Actually, the casting director Dan Hoy was, bound and determined that the film would be as well cast as possible without using veteran movie actors. So a lot of that is really thanks to his hard work. I mean, he has something like 20 hours of tapes of people auditioning. It was literally like hundreds of pictures and resumes. So it was done, very professionally. It wasn't like these were friends of ours that we just sort of cast in a movie or something. It was really sifting and looking and auditioning hundreds.
Now, how were you able to raise the money? You brought this in for under $330,000, which...
Yeah. Initially, the first money was raised from friends and acquaintances, and then when we were editing the film just last year in '85, we'd run out of funds again, and Paul saw a rough cut of the film, and so he helped us find the rest of the financing because he was very excited about the film. So it was kind of bits and pieces. There were moments when we thought the whole thing would grind to a halt, but then at the last moment we'd find some more money. But
Money?
Now, Paul, you produced
we're
in
still
theater.
looking.
You produced in theater. You were an associate producer with As Is.
Right.
How different do you find producing for film?
It's very different because film, you have so many different elements. When you're in a theater and you're on a stage, and it's there. You see what you see, and you're selling that. When you're selling a movie, you're selling a concept of a lot of things that you don't see but are there. So I mean that's a difference I can see. I enjoy both. I enjoy entertaining people, and when I saw the rough cut of Barney Glance, you should mention As Is.
Did you make a movie like that already?
Right.
I'm available. No.
When I saw the rough cut of Parting Glances, I felt really close with the concept of a positive gay image. And that was really important to me. And I felt if I could help bring that about and bring it to the screen, it'd be wonderful. But equally importantly, I was entertained. It was an entertaining look at something that was important to me. And that to me is the best combination, to make people aware of an issue that you feel is essential for them to hear and understand, but to say, hey, you can be entertained at the same time, so be open to that, and maybe the awareness will creep in.
Once you had finally cut it and edited it, how did you go about finding a distributor?
It was shown just like whatever 5 or 6 months ago at the Independent Feature Market, which is a big market held every fall in New York City for distributors and European television buyers. And Cinecom, the distributor, was there. They were one of the distributors attending. So they loved the film. They bought it literally like 1 week later. It was amazing.
And it was very quick. Phone was not constantly rang. Different producer, different distributor. Actually, Paramount even looked at it.
Yeah, Paramount saw it and loved it. They said that they didn't quite know if they would be able to plug it into the distribution network, so they must have decided they couldn't open it in 1,000 shopping malls across the land.
Oh, how unfortunate.
The awareness won't get through suburban.
But they liked it. I think they basically liked it because it was funny. They laughed or something. So this was one of the. It's funny. It's got humor. It's got it's. You can hear them talking about
the big moment. It's funny. It will play well.
But no, anyway, Cinecom was they were very much on the same wavelength as the film and wanted to distribute it as a independent American movie, but not in a few little art houses. They wanted to open it just like plain old movie, and they have, the resources to do that. So it was kind of a perfect match. They weren't too big and they weren't too small. So, and they've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, they have a good track record with these kind of films, and so we felt it was a good company to go with because we really wanted the film to be treated as well as it could be by a distributor. And because if you lose it, you lose it. So we wanted to pick someone who really felt would give it the time and attention we felt it deserved and it needed. And so far they've been able to do that. Being in 10 cities inside 2 months, as they say, is not chopped liver.
Yeah, they're happy because they have Parting Glances and A Room with a View going on at the same time.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah, they're booking them all over the place.
How has the industry itself reacted to the success of the film?
Actually, the film is very popular with the industry. We don't quite know why. It's like it's in Variety, like every week. They're always writing about it, and the industry in Los Angeles likes it very much, and we get calls all the time from agents and some of the majors have inquired about what we're doing next, and so that part of it's very, very exciting. That part, and the audience response is the most exciting. It closed the Gay Film Festival in New York, and that audience was fantastic. It was like they laughed so much. There was like so much carrying on and applause and laughter that like half the movie seemed like it was obliterated or something. So that was like a tremendous high, to have finished the film, and producers saw the film, and distributors and editors and sound mixers and all these industry people. So after a while, it becomes so closed and so incestuous. You don't know what you have anymore. So it's exciting to finally be able to show it to a real live audience. And that's what's fun about having it at the Embassy 72nd Street too.
It's we get daily reports. Character Michael will call from Los Angeles and tell us which movie star, which director has seen it today.
Guess it's great. It's a hot film for the industry types to go.
It's great.
Like the opening night, the director, because got really good reviews in LA, so the director of Pretty in Pink went to see Parting Glasses the first night. So some of the actors who were in the film who live out in LA now, they'll call and say, so and so went to see it.
It's great thinking somebody that you've heard of is seeing something that you've seen and hopefully enjoying it and getting something out of it. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, I think we went to see Pretty in Pink
the
same night.
Exactly. We did. We really did. We're paying homage to John Hughes, I guess. Right?
Well, it's a small world.
Right.
Bill, you had started out as a pianist at 5, and how did you segue from a musical career to film directing?
Oh, actually, it was just by accident. I mean, I was a musician since I was a kid, and I came to New York like in late teens to study at Juilliard, and sort of, was a bit discouraged because the classical music world, especially, I was a composer, so it's very tiny. You feel like you're doing this for 100 other people who like it, and so in frustration, I finally left, and I just went and got a regular undergraduate degree at Hunter College. And by chance, I took a film course, and really liked it because it sort of combines all these things that I find wonderful. Like literature and sound and music and photography and all the rest. So I studied film production at Hunter, and then I went out to LA for a while. Went to USC graduate school for film production, and then after that came back to New York and started getting film work, working as an editor and writing scripts, trying to get a independent feature going, because I very much wanted to write and direct a film of my own, as opposed to making horror movies for 10 years or something like that, and finally being able to
make your first.
So that was sort of how that evolved.
Did you find giving up music hard?
Well, it was at the time. I mean, I was only about 20 when I made this decision. So, and I became sort of a black sheep, among. I mean, some of these very serious musicians still find it appalling. I became, went into the movies, But it was sort of, gradual. It was quite a long time ago. And I mean, I still, I'm involved in music through film, and I listen to music all the time. It's sort of like learning to speak a second language. You always kind of, have access to it or something.
Because I found the music for Parting Glances to be very interesting in that each character seems to have its own theme, everything from Brahms to the British group Vronsky Beat.
Yeah, it was all pretty carefully worked out, and with thematic bits of music tied with certain characters, and sometimes a couple different kinds of music will actually be going on at the same time. And the classical stuff, was fun to put in, and I like the rock stuff too. Stuart Arkwright was a New York rock and roller. There's quite a bit of his music in there. He was fantastic. He was fun to work with, and the Vronsky Beat stuff is wonderful too. We got that just sort of by chance. I mean, I heard the record because one of the art directors gave it to me. And I thought, we should try to use this music. So one of the assistant editors was a British woman who sort of knew that whole music scene in England. So after 6 months of her calling back and forth and writing letters and sending telexes, and even at one point going to London, she finally worked out the music rights so we could use the Vronsky Beat.
And working with the big boys in London.
Now, Paul, you're not a producer by day. This is something you do on the side.
Right. For now, yes, at least. As I said before, I just like the idea of entertaining people. And there's so much in the world that, could use some entertainment, some light to it, and liveliness, that the idea that you could do that, is great. And so I've always thought about that. And then in different investments I make, I always try to deal with entertainment, whether it be the stock market or a movie or a theater or whatever, and get involved with it to put some of my input into it. And but I try to stick to entertainment because it's so hard to make people hear what you're saying and listen to you. And if you're beating their head over with a hammer, or politicizing, or passing laws, or making speeches, and they'll listen when you entertain them because they'll be more open to it. And so I figure that's the way I'm going to do it, because there's a lot to be made aware of by everybody. So that's what I do now, and as I get more and more involved, I just like it more and more, So the decisions just evolve as to how I involve myself.
As I said before, you had co-produced As Is on Broadway. Do you find it more risky to work in theater as opposed to film?
In a word, yes. Financially speaking, the theater is I find to be a much riskier proposition. Only because the main reason is the prices to get into the theater. For me, that's the bottom line. There are a lot of reasons why that's the case, but that's the bottom line. If you're going to entertain people and ask them to spend $45 to do it, you're going to have to really entertain them. And years ago we had things like South Pacific and My Fair Lady and Death of a Salesman, etc. And so they have a history of entertainment, and older people go to the theater and they've seen that, so they don't need to spend $45 to see what there is today. So it's easier from that standpoint because you have to convince them to go to the theater. As Bill said, we were talking to leave their homes and to make the trip and go into the theater. But they'll do it more openly because it's less expensive for them. They'll take that chance. And
you mean to go to a movie theater?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you entertain them, which is what we hope we do in Parting Glances, that's easier. That makes it easier.
Right.
Because they're more open to it.
So what's next for you, fellas?
Well, I've been working on a screenplay. I write quite a bit, so there's been a lot of work, with Parting Glances still. So I'm, trying to get some extra time so I can finish the screenplay and hopefully get it made.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you stop by today.
Thanks a lot. It was our pleasure as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for Parting Glances. I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
How'd you like it?
Okie doke. That's it.
Great.